Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm staying hyper local and I'm talking about Lake County, Illinois, specifically Vernon Hills. And before you think, what? An episode about a post office? Hold on, because what started as a minor personal annoyance of mine turned into a rabbit hole involving robbery, organized crime rings, chemical check fraud, and a federal agency that's essentially been playing whack-a-mole with a problem that cost Americans nearly $1 billion. And yeah, it's about a mailbox, but it's so much more than a mailbox. All right, here's the thing. I use the post office the way most reasonable adults do. I pull up, I drop off my mail in the drive-up box, and then I go on with my life. It takes maybe 30 seconds, and it's one of those small, underappreciated conveniences of modern suburban existence that you don't even think about it until it's gone. And then one day, I was pulling up to the Vernon Hills post office on Lakeview Parkway, 675 Lakeview Parkway, for those of you who know exactly what I'm talking about. And the outdoor drive-up drop-off box was taped shut, like physically wrapped up with duct tape, like it got into a fight and needed stitches. Fine, I figured it was temporary, maybe a few days, a week tops. I'll come back another time. Except weeks went by, then months, and the better part of a year. The box just sits there, mummified, while the post office cheerfully encourages you to park your car, walk inside, wait in line, hand your mail to a human being, or drop it off in the slots, and you have to pretend that it's not 1985 anymore. Now look, I genuinely like the staff at the Vernon Hills post office. They're pretty helpful. They're perfectly nice people, but come on. Making me park and go inside to drop off a single envelope is the bureaucratic equivalent of telling me to hand deliver my Netflix payment. It defeats the entire purpose. And here's what really gets me. I drive over to the Lake Zurich post office, the Libertyville post office, the other locations around Lake County. My favorite right now is the Mundelein one. And guess what? Their outdoor drop-off boxes were completely operational. No tape, no drama, just a box that you drop the mail into like nature intended. So what's the deal with Vernon Hills? Well, as it turns out, this isn't just a mysterious quirk. There's actually a documented incident behind it. Back in October 2021, Vernon Hills police were called to the post office on Lakeview Parkway, just across the street, after someone reported that the drive-up mailbox had been found wide open. Not pried open, not bashed in, just open, unlocked, swinging in the breeze. Police department spokesperson Jeff Hernesath confirmed that there were no pry marks on the box and no signs of forced entry. But officers couldn't rule out that a key may have been used to access it. The incident was believed to have occurred somewhere between October 9th and October 10th. And when asked whether any mail was actually stolen, his answer was, we don't know. That's the kind of answer that is somehow more unsettling than a clear yes, because it means that somebody possibly went through other people's mails, like bills, checks, personal letters, but nobody can confirm it one way or another. After the incident, the Vernon Hills Police Department put out on social media asking residents who believed if their mail might have been stolen to come forward and let them know. The total number of calls they received in response? One. Just one. Now, that could mean almost nothing happened, or it could mean that people hadn't realized yet that their mail was touched. Because here's the sinister thing about mail theft. You often don't find out for weeks, sometimes months, sometimes never, and by then the damage is done. To really understand what might have happened here and why closing that box may have been the right call even if it's incredibly annoying, you need to understand something called the arrow key. The U.S. Post Office uses what are called arrow keys, universal keys that allow postal employees to access collection boxes, outdoor parcel lockers, cluster box units, and apartment panels. One key equals many locks. It's a system that was built for efficiency and has become, frankly, a master key for organized crime. But here's what's been happening nationwide. In recent years, letter carriers in cities across the country, including Chicago, have been robbed at gunpoint, specifically so thieves can get their hands on these arrow keys. Criminals who obtain them can access multiple mailboxes and steal enormous quantities of mail. And the numbers are staggering. Letter carriers were robbed 717 times in fiscal year 2022 and the first half of fiscal 2023 combined. By fiscal year 2023, USPS reported 628 robberies of postal employees in that year alone. Robbery of postal workers was the fastest growing and most common serious crime against postal employees, up nearly sevenfold from fiscal year 2019 to fiscal year 2023. Sevenfold in 4 years. That's not a trend, that's a crisis. The USPS reported 412 letter carriers were robbed in 2022. And the primary target in many of these cases wasn't their wallet, it was the key. Because an arrow key doesn't just get you into one box, it gets you into practically all of them. So you rob one mail carrier, and suddenly you have access to the neighborhood's worth of financial documents, personal checks, and sensitive correspondence. Now, did an arrow key play a role in the Vernon Hills incident? It appears possible. Police acknowledged they couldn't rule out that a key was used since there were no signs of forced entry. The Postal Inspector's Chicago Division confirmed they were actively working on mail theft investigations across Chicagoland at the time, but declined to confirm specifics about Vernon Hills. So, why would anyone go through all this effort, robbing postal workers, tampering with mailboxes for mail? What's actually in that box worth stealing? 2 words: check washing. Check washing involves the use of chemicals to physically alter a check, typically to change the payee's name and the amount, so that it can be deposited into a criminal's account. And the more sophisticated version of this is called check cooking, using digital manipulation, photo editing software, and high-quality printers to manufacture multiple counterfeit checks from a single stolen check. So you drop a check in the mailbox to pay your electrical bill for $140. The thief intercepts it, washes it with chemicals to remove the ink, rewrites it for $1,400 or $14,000 payable to themselves, and deposits it via mobile banking app at 2 a.m, so there's no human interaction at the bank. By the time anyone figures out what happened, that money is gone. The scale of this problem is almost hard to believe. It's just a 6-month window, February through August of 2023. The Financial Crimes Enforcement Network received over 15,400 reports of mail theft-related check fraud from more than 840 financial institutions, representing more than $688 million in reported suspicious activity. The Better Business Bureau puts total annual losses from check washing at over $815 million. And if the current trends continue unchecked, experts project check fraud losses could eventually reach $30 billion. This fraud was reported in every single state, Washington, D.C., and Puerto Rico. The most common outcome? 44% of stolen checks were altered and deposited. 26% were used as templates to create counterfeit checks, and 20% were just fraudulently signed and deposited as is. And suspicious activity reports related to check fraud increased by 134% between 2020 and 2023. So when you drop a personal check into a blue outdoor mailbox, you are participating in what has become one of the most targeted points of vulnerability in American financial crime, which makes it feel a little less crazy that the Vernon Hills Post Office wrapped theirs up with duct tape. A little less crazy. Now, to their credit, the USPS isn't completely ignoring this. In May 2023, the Postal Service announced plans to replace 49,000 antiquated arrow locks with electronic locks, making the keys far less useful to criminals even if stolen. They're also deploying higher security collection boxes in high-risk areas. The USPS said it hoped to install 12,000 high-security blue collection boxes in high-risk areas over the next fiscal year. And that's progress, real progress actually, but here's the thing. USPS has 139,409 collection boxes total across the country. So 49,000 new electronic locks is a meaningful dent, but it's still leaving well over 90,000 boxes operating on the old system in the meantime. And the next fiscal year is the kind of timeline that has a way of stretching in government operations. Meanwhile, despite the surge in postal crime, GAO found that the overall postal inspector workforce remained relatively unchanged, while the postal police workforce actually decreased. You have a crime wave that's increased nearly 7-fold, and the law enforcement resources dedicated to fighting it have stayed flat or actually shrunk. Someone in Washington should probably look at that disconnect. So here's where I come back to the local level because I think it matters. The Vernon Hills Post Office closed that drive-up box, presumably after the October 21 tampering incident and in the context of a much larger national problem. And on paper, I get it. I understand the logic. A compromised outdoor box is a liability. The outdoor drop box isn't just a convenience, it's the whole point. It's the whole point of why I go through there. There's also a quieter issue here. If the post office closes its box due to security concerns, but doesn't communicate that clearly, people in the community are left wondering, is my mail safe here at all? What exactly happened? The lack of public specifics creates more anxiety than transparency would. Here's what I'd genuinely recommend for anyone in Vernon Hills or Lake County sending checks or sensitive documents by mail. Stop mailing checks. Set up ACH payments, online bill pay, or use your bank's electronic transfer options. It's 2026 after all. The check is a wonderful tradition, but it's also a beautiful little rectangle of personal financial data just waiting to be intercepted. If you must mail a check, use a gel ink pen. It's chemically more resistant to washing, and drop it inside the post office counter directly or hand it to a carrier. Don't leave it sitting in a box unattended for hours. And you can sign up for USPS Informed Delivery. It's free. It sends you digital previews of mail that's been scanned for delivery to your address. If a check disappears before it arrives at its destination, you'll have a record that it was in the system. Monitor your bank accounts more actively than you might think necessary. Check fraud sometimes takes weeks to surface. Don't assume a cleared payment means that the check wasn't intercepted. Criminals sometimes make copies and cash those later. And finally, if you think your mail has been stolen, report it to the Vernon Hills Police Department, to the USPS Postal Inspection Service hotline at 1-877-876-2455 or online at postalinspectors.uspis.gov. These reports build a statistical record that federal agencies use to allocate enforcement resources. Your complaint isn't just a formality, it's data. Look, a taped-up mailbox in a suburb of Chicago is a small thing on its face, but it sits at the intersection of a genuinely alarming national trend. One that's robbing real people of real money, one check at a time, in the most analog way imaginable. The Vernon Hills Post Office didn't create this problem, neither did its staff. They're dealing with the downstream effects of a crime wave that's been building for years and a federal system that's been slow to adapt. But in the meantime, stay skeptical, stay local, and for the love of all things good, go set up auto pay for your bills. I'll see you later. Dreaming of Disney but worried about the cost? Meet Just the Essential Disney Hacks. This compact guide is your ticket to a magical vacation without the villainous price tag. Learn insider tips on saving money on everything from tickets to meals. Discover how to maximize fun while minimizing your expenses. Don't let budget fears keep you from creating unforgettable family memories. Get Just the Essential Disney Hacks today and start planning the Disney trip you've always wanted at a price you can afford.